Hey everyone, and welcome to the Nerd Room, where we talk all things comics and movies. This is episode number 21. We're discussing Captain America: Civil War. I'm one of your hosts, Tim.
I'm Troy.
And I'm Izzy.
Izzy, it's great to have you back in the Nerd Room.
Always, yeah.
Yes, and we're coming off of seeing Captain America: Civil War. We're less than 48 hours out. We're recording a little early.
Yep.
So we don't even have final international or domestic numbers for this movie, but it's playing huge.
It came out, like I was talking to you guys, I think when we went, before it was owned by Disney, right? Like, remember, Iron Man was the first one. It was distributed back then by Paramount.
Right.
And Paramount has had this history of putting movies out in Brazil before they come out here.
Interesting.
Which has always been a problem for me because I have to really, like, neo-dodge spoilers because I'm always on social media.
You have a huge presence on the internet. I don't know how you avoided
You know
spoilers.
what? You know what? It's funny because I had this conversation on a different podcast, and I can't even tell you exactly what I do because people will circumvent the little systems I have in place to kind of have it so that certain words and certain things don't come onto my computer, and it takes like it takes an effort to be spoiler free, especially for a movie like this because I care so much about this story arc, right? And I was so excited. I'm a big Marvel fan. Civil War is one of my favorite, if not the favorite. It was really the arc that brought me back to reading superhero comics.
A lot of people have had that experience with
right?
the Civil War.
I've recommended Civil War as a starting point for a lot of people because comics, it's kind of difficult to. I get this question all the time. I'm sure you guys as comic book readers must have that as well. People ask, like, I would like to read comics, but I have no idea where to start because it is daunting, right? Like you have decades of stories, and it's hard to find one specific point where I can say, buy this one, and then just start reading, like just keep reading from there. And if there's anything there that you think like you need a little bit of back, just go back and try to get a little bit more context. That's what I did, right? I started with Civil War back, reading comics again, and then went to a lot of it has to do with like the events of Avengers Disassembled, right? So like, okay, I guess I have to read that, and then it kind of like you start building the basis of your knowledge on comics. But I always found Civil War was a great primer.
It is.
Because for a lot of reasons, it's a great story. The art is really good.
It's fantastic.
McNiven's one of my favorites, right? So that alone makes it. It's a cool story. It's just a cool story. Right?
It's great, and that's a little different than what they've done with the movie because they've stopped catering to first-time MCU goers. They're assuming that you've seen at least an Avengers movie, at least maybe an Age of Ultron or Winter Soldier going into this. They don't give you a lot of contextual background for some of these characters. They kind of just thrust you into the movie.
Well, based on ticket sales, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that
exactly.
everybody saw it, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like it's definitely, this doesn't hold your hand like a lot of the other Marvel movies, right? Like my wife, she loves this stuff too, but she's not as involved, let's say. So there's a few movies that she didn't see it, right? She's like, oh, who's that guy? And what are you talking about? Like, when was that? Was that on like the last Avengers? And at times, even there's a few references that I'm like, wait a second. I have to like think back, like, when did that happen exactly? Yeah. So it's you have to be invested in the universe at this point to really follow everything.
And like you said, there seems to be a lot of people invested because this is our 13th entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So
isn't that crazy?
We're almost 8 years, or almost exactly 8 years in since Fury showed up at the end of Iron Man 1 and said, you are now part of a bigger universe.
I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative, which I freaked. It's funny because, as you know, Avengers Initiative was something that happened quite later on, right? Like, we all understood that he meant to say, we're starting the Avengers, basically, right? Even though, like, what he's referencing to is something else, like, at the end of, like, Civil War, basically, like, the Avengers Initiative was a complete, like, the 50 states, like, different Avengers groups and everything. But still, like, it's funny to look back. I've been meaning to watch Iron Man again, just to kind of really appreciate what that movie created and see what changed in that universe. It was a little bit more grounded in reality, I would say. It's more comic booky at this point, definitely. Right? But yeah, no, it's been a crazy. So 13 movies.
Yeah. And we're going into probably the biggest. We got like 10 movies now until Infinity War.
They scheduled releases until 2020.
Yeah, so they've got to the end of Phase 3, which is going to be the culmination of the entirety since Nick Fury showed up in that room and said, "You're part of a bigger universe." This culmination is coming out, and it's starting with this movie. So this movie kind of sums up a lot of what's happened in Phase 1, Phase 2, and pushes you forward and drives the narrative towards Infinity War because we have Anthony and Joe Russo back in the director's seats.
Wait, really?
So they're Winter Soldier directors, Civil War directors, and they are directing Infinity War Part 1 and 2.
Both. I didn't know that. This is new to me. I didn't know that. I mean, I definitely see why, but I didn't know that. Yeah. Was that that just recently
That
announced?
was about
quite a
year
while
ago.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Really?
been for a while, and
Yeah.
I think they're also producing the Spider-Man Homecoming movie as well.
Again,
Because
I see
they
why.
have fingers in there at
Yeah.
some point because they've, as we'll talk about, they really start to develop this Tony, Peter Parker, Spider-Man sort of relationship, and you can see them and why they would be part of building the Spider-Man universe as well as building the whole Marvel universe as a whole. So these guys coming out, and we spoke about this a bit before we started recording, was they came out of Community.
Yeah.
Like,
Right?
They didn't have.
I love
big
when they
action
have
movie.
the bald guy who was the dean in Community. I forget
Yeah,
his name.
that was another. Because what's his name?
Because Abed was
Yeah,
also in
Abed,
that.
yeah, that's it, yeah.
I forget
Winter
his-
Soldier, right?
Yeah.
What was I forget his name? Something Putty, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, no. So seeing it was nice to see the dean because it kind of I love Community, right? So to see like I knew there were, when I heard that the Russos were directing Cap 2, basically, I'm like, really, like the Community
And that's the general
guys?
audience, right? Everybody
Yeah,
kinda
exactly.
laughed
I'm
at
like,
that.
that's an odd choice, but whatever. Favreau was an odd choice for Iron Man as well, right?
But they've taken four of these team up movies, and this is somewhat of that. They've taken directors that can take a large cast and give each person an arc and not make it feel cluttered or forced in.
Yeah, like James Gunn too for Guardians of the
Yeah.
Galaxy.
Yes.
right?
And
First
Joss
example.
Whedon too was
Yes.
a TV director, and he took the Avengers and took an ensemble cast
Yeah.
and was able to give each person their due without making anyone, without short shipping anyone.
Yeah.
So, and we really see that here. So we walked out only like 36 hours ago from this movie.
Still fresh.
Yeah.
Like
Very
when
fresh.
you're walking out of the theater, what were your initial thoughts? We'll go spoiler free here, and we'll kind of throw a spoiler tag on it when we start to get into a bit more detail. But Troy, what were your thoughts coming out of the theater when you first stepped out? Were you like
Yeah. My thoughts just satisfied.
slow clap?
Satisfied is a good word. It's a
Satisfied.
very good word.
Yeah, they nailed every character. Every character was great. The story was phenomenal, and they went a step above Winter Soldier. Like I was telling Izzy off air before, this is the one franchise in the MCU where every sequel has been better than the last one.
Which is something that, as movie fans, that's not something we're very used to.
No.
To having sequels that are better than the original. Right?
Exactly.
Like it's been a long running trope that they kind of like lose their way around, like between the first and second, the production, like. Sometimes the director doesn't come back. They change the writers or whatever. But it's very common for us to say something like, "Oh, the first one was great, and the second one and the third one not so much."
Exactly.
And that might be a consequence of the first one's great, and we get into a situation where like, okay, we need to pump this out. That one made $90 million. It was supposed to make 30.
Yeah.
Let's get the next one out as soon as possible. And so they push these things through the production and basically just kind of boom, 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 and then we're out. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we didn't have the right writers. We didn't get the right actors back. The director couldn't do it because he was doing some other movie.
And you hear that through the grapevine nowadays a lot more than before because you hear things like, "Oh, so and so dropped out because they didn't like the script, but they're still making it anyway." And then you start hearing like, "Oh, this is I've seen this happening before so many times." But yeah, no, it's really interesting. It really gets our expectations quite high when they keep topping themselves like that, right? I hope this trend continues. I'm cautiously optimistic because I have been let down in the past before, but Marvel has
Batman
not
vs Superman.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I said I was going to talk about that.
Yeah, no more BBS.
It's funny because I did a video on this before, like it was kind of like a primer before recording the show today,
Yeah.
and I did like a 15-minute video, and at the end of it, I'm like, there's so much I didn't cover yet because I had so much to say about the movie. Like it means a great deal to me, that movie. And the fact that they nailed it that way, like Troy was saying, they nail every character, everybody who shows up. Like Tim mentioned with Avengers, they didn't shortchange anybody. There's people who show up and they don't have as big a role, but it's such a joy to have them there. For the little moments that they're there, they are great, and that's all you can ask. Right?
Yes.
That's all you can ask.
Yep.
You know, and this thing, it's packed with cinematic references, Easter eggs, comic book references, and to a large part, it does this so organically.
Yeah.
Right? It's not forcing anything. Even Age of Ultron, it felt some of this was shoehorned in.
A little bit of setup in that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Like there's a lot of setup here, and there's a lot of like bringing things to a close.
Yep.
But I never really felt that this was a fitting sequel to both Age of Ultron and Winter Soldier.
Yes.
And it did it successfully.
When you say about like not shooing things in and making it organic, one thing that strikes me, and I don't think this goes into spoiler territory, but from the trailers, there's a few characters from the Marvel universe that are not there, namely the Hulk and Thor, right? And the way they kind of like explain their absence there, not only works for the movie, but makes a point about what's going on, right? We can go into more detail when we go into like spoilers and talking about the content of the film. It's very well done. Like, it doesn't feel like these guys are just, they didn't sign a contract or they were not busy, they're not interested. No, these are like, it really sells you the idea. These are characters who got their own thing going.
Yeah.
And not only there's a reason for them to be away, but the reason plays into the motivations of what's going on.
Exactly.
I thought that was very, very well done. Like, they handled it very well. Like, when they mentioned, they bring up these characters, right? And there's the argument made, like, see, and on top of this, there's this. And I'm like, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like, it makes perfect sense that they're not here.
Exactly.
And yeah, it was great.
It makes that universe feel much bigger.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like Winter Soldier when they drop Stephen Strange's name. You get the sense that this guy exists in this universe, and they do such a great job of handling that, right?
Yeah.
And they even kind of play on that a bit. And this isn't really spoilers, but General Ross at the time is talking about, if I had lost 3 megaton nuclear weapons, I would know where they are. So they're questioning
I'd
Cap,
be in
like,
trouble if I didn't.
Exactly. Where's Hulk and where's Thor?
Yes.
You don't know where these guys are.
And the character's just like, well, damn, he's right.
Yeah.
And
He got me
at that moment, like, it felt like I really enjoyed that. It was like, they're not just hand waving the fact that these guys aren't here. They're not pretending they're not here.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not here, and that plays into the story. It was great. Like, how not many movies can use the absence of a character to make a point like that.
True, yeah.
So what we're going to do here, guys, is we're going to go a little chronologically through this. We're going to step through the movie, going from kind of our opening scenes through the major big fight battles, and then we'll get into the end sequences. So we're going to mega spoiler territory. So if you have not seen the movie yet, I would caution you to stop right now, come back in a little bit, go ahead and check out the movie. Everyone else on the planet is seeing it.
Yeah.
So get out there.
Why haven't you?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yes, exactly. By this time when this drops, if you haven't seen it,
Yeah,
you're
gonna have
getting
to-
everything spoiled anyways. So you might as well just keep listening.
Exactly, yeah.
But Troy and I did a prediction episode 19. So go back and check that out. So we went through the Civil War comic event series and tried to see what we would adapt it. Izzy, you are very, very familiar with the series as well. So maybe as we're going through, we'll comment as to what aspects they adapted well and what I personally thought they're going a completely different direction than they actually did in the movie. And you can check that back out in episode 19. But we'll discuss a bit about that when we get towards the end. And again, full spoiler territory. You've been warned. This is where we're going. All right, guys. Opening scene. So we sit down, get a couple nice trailers. Everyone kind of shows up on time except for Izzy.
Except for me.
That
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland trailer, wow.
Yeah, fantastic. Why didn't they show Rogue One?
That's what I was saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's Disney.
Yeah, what was
Yeah,
that?
why not?
Yeah.
I don't know. We got the scenes,
Crazy.
we got the Doctor Strange trailer and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
fantastic.
Very good, yeah.
Civil War opens with, again, very ominous look at a 1991. What did you think of the big white letters across the screen?
I like that. That did it for me, actually. I
Yeah.
kind of like that.
Well,
yeah.
with the 3D effect, it kind of like,
Yeah.
I like that. It's very much like, it reminds me of, when Avatar kind of brought back the whole 3D thing, right?
Yeah.
And up until Avatar, 3D was being done, but very like tentatively, they're not really, it was all about like the gimmick of like throwing things in your
It's
face,
like a
right?
Muppets thing or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
very much
Yeah.
so. Like, it's just like they throw things in your face and you're like, oh, like you go to Universal Studios and they have like some 3D
Yeah.
showings or
Yeah.
whatever. But with this, like with Avatar, I remember they made a big deal about how the fact that it's not just like things jumping in your face, you get the sense of depth, right? Like you feel like you're there. There's like this, there's something to it more than just like an image that's like 2D on a flat surface. And the letter, I kind of like that effect because it reminded me of how like the interface on some of the things they use in Avatar. Like it's just like there's something kind of hovering over the screen. In the movie, when there's like these holographic like displays and things like that, that depth, right? Like this comes out of like it loses focus and they pull focus on the character, and you feel like you're just I have my hand here, but now I'm focusing over there, and this goes like a little bit blurry. I normally don't like 3D movies all that much because I think they
me
don't
neither.
add too much
Exactly,
to
the
it.
experience.
But when you have little things like this, like little interfaces that like they're kind of like they're popping up a little bit and they'll go out of focus because the action is over here.
Yeah.
I like that, and the letters like they kind of it felt that way to me, like the same kind of way.
That happened quite a bit, and what I thought they were going for was this comic book.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's-
And then
and
Queens.
the date is just boom, it's up. It's not small text at the bottom.
Yeah.
I was
Very
gonna say
clear.
that's the difference. Like
Yeah.
usually it's like a little thing either at the top or the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Not like a huge, over the entire frame.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I think Batman v Superman could have used that a couple times,
Yeah,
actually, to be
just
honest,
like- just-
because at least you always know where you were during the movie,
And we
right?
jump around a lot in this movie to very, very different countries.
Yeah.
It's very much a global movie.
Yes,
I actually
yes.
wanted to comment. I was gonna make a note on this. I noticed that, and I think this is kind of like the Russo's thing. I have a feeling that's kind of like that's the flavor that they brought to this. They go for very like globe trotting, like Jason Bourne,
Yeah.
kind of like it's not American centric.
Yeah.
It's kind of like all over the world, which I think sells the idea that these guys they're not just taking taking care of America. Like
Yeah.
even though like one of them is literally called Captain America, wearing
in the
blue
title.
and red.
Yeah.
But it's like there's a global thing going on.
Yes.
Like it's the whole world here is at stake, right? I like it. I enjoy it. You know why? Because you know how when Captain America Winter Soldier came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this feels like a spy flick."
Yeah.
Yes,
Like
political
it's
thriller.
like it's like a political thriller. There's the intrigue and all that stuff, and this kind of piggybacks off of that in that sense because, like again, remembering like the exploits of Bourne in the flicks, they're kind of like going from one country to the other, and it felt that way. Like you're not just confined to like, oh, this is like happening in LA or in New York, like in the first one. This is like the world is the stage, and the world is at stake. So.
Yeah.
But still felt very intimate at the same time. You know, sometimes you get these superhero movies where it's like it's a wide scale, but like the whole world's blowing up.
Yeah.
This still felt very intimate, very character driven in this universe. So I appreciated what they did there.
What people were concerned about was this going to be an Avengers movie, and the first scene out of the gate here is it's addressing a bit of the Winter Soldier, his origin story, right? So it's talking about a bit of Siberia, and they're showing him in action, kind of using this brainwashing codes. Did you catch the Homecoming? That kept coming
Yeah,
up.
seemed like a little nod.
And
Yeah.
it's just a nod to the Spider-Man
Yeah.
Homecoming thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how that plays. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but it's maybe just a small little...
All kind of
nod.
random text, right? But
Exactly.
I felt like every time they said Homecoming, I thought like Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What are they programming me? Is this?
and then that's what I think they're trying to do, right? Is
That's funny. That is subliminal like programming.
Yeah.
Because there's a book that came out. It wasn't really tied to the MCU or whatever, but it was called Captain America: Homecoming, and it came out before the Winter Soldier. And I was like, oh, is this like? I was flipping through my comic books today. I was like, Homecoming. Like every time I hear Homecoming,
this.
all I think is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's
there's
happening.
little things in there. There's a little scene too when we saw someone in the chamber, and it had the D and then 23.
Yeah.
Right. So interesting.
Yeah, another little Disney nod.
Yeah.
We get the Winter Soldier going out on a mission. He's been woken up, and we see kind of the same torture, brainwashing scenes that we saw in Winter Soldier. And we get this kind of 1991 flash up, and then we see him pursuing a car, eliminating or assassinating the people inside, and then stealing little blue packs or whatever they were. My first thought was, okay, Black Panther's in here. These are like liquid vibranium. Was the first place I went. I didn't really go to the Super Soldier program, which eventually that we're told that essentially it is.
You know, it's funny because when you mention that, right? Like we keep coming back to this mission. Like obviously, there's a great deal of importance to this mission. They keep mentioning the date.
Yep.
You see the scenes and everything. And it's funny because, like, bringing back to BVS again, like, you have a lot of, like, things that, oh, these are, like, you know, flashbacks or dreams or whatever. And that distracts from the movie in a way that this is the opposite. It's like, you're intrigued, like, what is that? Like, what's so important about this? Who are these people?
Yeah.
And they forget about it for a while. You have the action, you have, like, what's going on currently. But then you go back to that again, like, somebody brings up, like, what happened, where were you that day?
1991.
Yeah.
1991.
Yeah. And like what happened, and when the payoff finally happens, where they show you what happened, it was very satisfying. It didn't feel distracting, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't feel like this is not adding to the movie. This is a mystery that's like set up right at the beginning, like right at the get-go. You see it, and then you're like, it keeps hinting at it. They come back to it, and it felt very satisfying when you see it and how big an event it was. Like, holy
It's a
crap.
good payoff.
Yeah, it was a good payoff.
And it kind of sees it, like you said, right through the movie, and it gives you a little bit more information each and every time, because the Zemo talks about it a lot, and we get different characters, and then eventually it kind of rounds out. We'll get to that at the end, but what it rounds out to. And like it says, like you said, it wasn't distracting. I like that. It was like, you always had it in the back of your mind, like, oh yeah, there's this thing with Winter Soldier. What's the deal with that?
Yeah,
Like,
you want to keep knowing more about
and
it.
it builds
you
more.
you see the scene, right? And they stash that away for a while, but they keep dropping the reference, and then you see a little bit more of the scene, and when they give you, like, you're ready, and you're like, okay, this is it. Like, the characters got to where they need to be, and, like, we have enough runtime that, like, this is about right, so it all felt right. Like, it was a satisfying is a word that keeps coming back when talking about this movie. It was a satisfying payoff. It was well done. It did not distract, like, other movies that try to do the whole, like, oh, let's see, like, you know, a dream sequence, or like a vision of the future, or like a flashback, or whatever. It was just well done. It was
a
well
payoff
done.
within the movie. It wasn't setting up something else.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That makes a
great.
huge difference.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
this is not just like them teasing you. It's like, no, give us another $14,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you
Yeah.
in 3 years.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
You get to actually see that to its completion. And
Definitely.
And then we had a tie-in comic called Captain America, not Road to War. There's an infant comic series that actually, before we get to the first big fight scene that takes place in Nigeria, so we get the new Avengers, the ones that come out of Age of Ultron. So we get Vision, Scarlet Witch, Rhodey, Falcon, Cat, Black Widow.
Yes.
In a big fight sequence. So there's a small tie-in comic that actually shows you the Avengers going from Age of Ultron and eventually into this battle in Lagos, which is pretty cool. So this is about a year out from Age of Ultron. as far as timeline goes within the MCU. And then we get essentially the wrapping up of the arc within Winter Soldier with Brock Rumlow's Crossbones. And so we get him coming back, and a couple great lines from Brock Lumlow talking about, I'm pissed off at you because you dropped a building on my face.
Yeah. Very comic book.
Yeah, exactly.
It was. And he is great in that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a short sequence.
If the only complaint, like a minor quibble I have with this movie, it's the fact that I felt that he was underused. But there's so much going on in the movie.
Yeah.
It would be very hard to keep him coming back, especially because he's not that big a character, right? Like he's a guy who was he was an antagonist of Cap in the last movie, and then he's now leading these like paramilitary like terrorist groups, right? But he's not some kind of like brains of the operation, conduct. So I think if they try to keep bringing that guy back and forcing him to be the antagonist, the anti-Cap, it might have felt a little bit forced,
a little flat,
exactly. So while I was like, oh, it's too bad that he comes in and he has the suit and he's a match for Cap, but he kind of got taken out early on, and I was like, oh, that kind of I wanted to see more of him, but. I like that very, very minor complaint. Of all the things you can complain about a movie, the fact that you didn't get too much of a character who's largely inconsequential to the main thing, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, and he really is in there to not only tie into the Winter Soldier a bit tighter, but also he's there to facilitate this battle that eventually leads to the culmination and this instant thing. Like we talked about, is there going to be an incident? A very particular, like in the comic book where you have Stanford explosion and you get a lot of kids dying and stuff like that. This is more of a culmination of numerous events, and this is just another piece of those incidents that eventually lead to the Sokovia Accords. We have a really big fight scene in here, and we're kind of thrusted right into it. Very similar to Winter Soldier again, right? You have a little bit of backstory, and then boom, you're into the action.
Yeah.
What do you guys think there? Because this is our first look at some of these characters in big battle sequences, particularly like Scarlet Witch and Falcon shone in this fight sequence. Yeah. Falcon is a badass with those wings.
Yeah, the shield that he uses.
Yeah,
right?
He's got them up, and they're kind of.
Wow. It's the Russos really know how to handle action scenes
They really do. Which you wouldn't expect from guys who became famous shooting a sitcom, basically.
Exactly. Going back to Winter Soldier, seeing the hand-to-hand combat, the knife action going on with Winter Soldier and Cap, it's incredible. And they continue it again here. Lots of stunt work. They don't really rely so much on the CG until later on to another favorite, the airport scene.
Yeah.
So everything else is really just stunt work. It's just fantastically done.
Because a lot of it you can't do CG in this. Yes, you love with the Scarlet Witch stuff, fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Cap and the Falcon and the stuff
Bucky,
Bucky and all that, it's all hand-to-hand combat. And it's just fantastic to see. Because like the biggest thing, and one of the big things that got the Russos onto Winter Soldier was one of the Community episodes, they did like a paintball fight.
Yes.
And they're like, these guys can shoot action. They know where to put the cameras. They know how to...
They did a few, I believe. It was a two-parter once, and then they did another two-parter, if I remember correctly.
Interesting.
This is a fantastic way to get kind of a feel for and the cohesiveness of this new Avengers group, because it was really at the end of Age of Ultron that we got their introduction. Yeah. And we never really saw them fighting together.
That's right.
Yeah. And we don't have Rhodey or Vision in this fight, so you don't get the whole unit there. Mm-hmm. But just seeing how much Wanda, how far she's come as far as developing her skills, because she really saves Captain America.
Yeah.
Because towards the end of this fight sequence, we get Brock Rumlow, Crossbones, trying to commit suicide and taking Cap with him. Mm-hmm. And she protects him and then chucks him up into this building.
But it doesn't quite work how she planned.
Yeah. So again, it's showing that, yes, they have been training for a year, but she still hasn't fully developed her powers and control over them, right?
They're constantly, like, it's one thing you see in the comics, right? And I don't think we've seen this that much in superhero movies. They're helping each other out in these, like, I'll do this and you finish them off kind of thing. Like, you boost me up, I'll hold this guy, you take him out. So you get that idea that these guys have been working as a unit. They know how to do in video game terms, they're like doing a special off of one another and stuff like that.
They've leveled up.
Exactly, right? So no, that's really cool to see. Like, obviously she's gotten much more of a handle on her powers, right? But we needed that event to happen, right? And it makes sense that it'd be like they're trying to, because I mean, I knew going in that the situation with the school in Stanford wasn't going to happen. Like, it didn't look that way to me, but I knew for a fact, like from seeing the trailers, like it's one of these. They're going to screw one of these up. Yeah. And it made sense. Like you're saying, like, Crossbones trying to kill himself and take Cap with him. Wanda contains the explosion the last second, hoists the guy up. but then she loses control a little bit, and it was a little bit too close to a building. Maybe she didn't notice where, seen from below.
Right.
And it's funny because I fly drones, right? So flying drones, I can tell you, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where things, because once things are up there, they become very much 2D to you.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell like how far, and so that's kind of what happens. She kind of like flies the guy up, and it explodes on the side of the building, and that grenade was packing a huge punch because pretty much the whole side of the building was taken out. And that's kind of like the event that like you could see in the MCU that people were already shifting towards. Like I thought like a great hint in that way was at the end of the first Avengers, where they have like a bunch of like montages of like the reporters talking to people, and then there's like Stan Lee shows up like, oh, superheroes in New York, like get out of here. And one of the guys is like, oh, the destroyer, whatever, like who's gonna pay for this? And I was like, oh, I see where they're going with this.
Foreshadowing.
So we already have like that's the event that really forces the government's hand to come up with the Sokovia Accord, right? But you already had that kind of like underlying, like that's why when Ross is showing like all the different events, right? Like you had Sokovia, you had New York, Washington, right? So like as you're watching that scene when he's like, basically he's explaining to the characters, but he's also giving the audience a refresher. Like, this is not coming out of nowhere. Look at all they have done. Like, there's a reason for this. And this is one of the things I like both about the comic and the movie, that this is not a black and white, a very like clear-cut good versus evil.
Exactly.
There is an argument for the registration, right? Which in the comics is called registration. This is called the Sokovia Accords. And there's the argument against. And they're both handled, I think, very well. Like, you have the character of I think Damien's mother in Civil War.
Oh, okay,
right? The little kid who had like the little Iron Man figure. Exactly. She spits on Tony Stark at the funeral, right? So you have like they spend some time showing that Iron Man is feeling guilty over what he does. He really realized it. But then they also spend time showing that we can't be a pawn of government. So we have to be able to have autonomy. And both are done very well. Neither one is like full, at least for me, neither one was fully convincing me that they are the right side, which I liked.
There's so much gray there, and I found myself bouncing back and forth. Like I inherently migrate towards Cap because Cap's my boy. But like when you're talking about accountability and the fact that there's no one kind of controlling these people, I'm kind of like, well, that kind of makes sense. Like, I just don't really know which side to go on. And Vision has a really cool line when they start debating the Accord, is that, ever since the enhanced people have shown up, there's been this exponential increase in villains and people trying to challenge the Avengers. And I thought that was a really, really cool line.
It is. It brought me back to The Dark Knight when Batman is talking to, Bruce Wayne is talking to Alfred. They mention there too how the reason the Joker happened and the reason the mob sought the Joker for help is because Batman pushed them to desperation.
Exactly.
Right? And you have that. Like it's very interesting how this plays up here because this is kind of like a trope in superhero mythos, right? Like the superheroes come up and you think that how come they don't just solve everything? Like they're superpower. Like if these people existed in our world, wouldn't everything just be better? But it's not quite like that. They show like no, things would be worse for it in a way, right? Because you have more damage. You
escalation.
Have the people who are powered. They're not all going to be good.
Exactly.
So I found that very interesting. I like that idea, right? Like I like the idea. I'm not sure if you guys read Injustice.
Yeah,
right?
Year 1 and 2.
Exactly. It's a great line.
Phenomenal.
Right? Like, and they really much play with that. Like, what if Superman just decided to like fix everything? Wouldn't that just be great? But they showed that it's not quite that simple. And I like when stories treat it with that realism. Like, it's not as simple as just like a superpowered being showing up and protecting us because there's going to be problems, right? Like, if I hand you a gun, it's not going to be all great. Like, do you have something in your hands that is dangerous, potentially dangerous? Nobody with a lot of power can be 100% trusted to use it well every time.
And that's the thing. You don't know who you're handing the gun to sometimes, right?
Exactly.
It's like, sure, I'll give this to you, but you don't know what you're going to do with it. And at the same time, you see this, I think, really cool progression of Tony Stark because there's a line in Iron Man 2 where he says, I have successfully privatized world peace.
I think that's the first one, is it not?
Or one or the other. So essentially, I think it's during the court scene with Justin Hammer.
You're right.
You're right. Yeah.
And so that's that arrogance of Tony Stark. And we've seen him come so far from that point where he's tried to basically privatize world peace and it's not working because you have so much escalation going into this.
And it's going out of control. Like, because in the beginning, right, like we have Iron Man and then Nick Fury shows up. It's like, no, you're not the only one, right? And that's the problem. Like, you have the people who are super powered and have good motivations, and you have the people who don't have those motivations, and you have people who can switch. Because again, how can you trust that the good guy will remain the good guy
Well, it's
forever.
It's just another line out of the Dark Knight,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
right. You either die the hero, you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Villain.
Exactly. Right? So
Yeah,
it's
such a great
I
line.
like that. I like how it's not just like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. It's super clear. No, it's a little more fluid than that,
Yeah.
right?
Even more so than the comic book actually itself.
There's not that divide, and that's what's really cool about this is that, and we'll talk a bit about Zemo, but there's not really an antagonist in the movie.
No, there isn't.
And it's very different type of comic book movie in the fact that you don't know which side you're pulling for. Usually you're kind of like, there's a clear cut black and white, you're cheering for Cap, you're cheering for the Avengers. Here it was all over the place. I did not know which way to go, and you can see the character motivations behind some of this. And this is where they bring in Wakanda, right? You see them come to the forefront and leading the charge with the Sokovia Accords and coming out of the shadows. And that's referenced directly by King T'Chaka, which is also a nice presence in the film.
Yeah, it's cool because I really like that. Like everything about the movie felt very, even though it's like a very comic booky movie, it felt very grounded and real. Like when T'Chaka is talking, and then Black Widow has to kind of like, we're sorry. Like I'm representing the group that kind of caused this. We're really sorry, and we're trying to do this right. And T'Chaka's like, he's appreciative of it, and everything. Like the stakes felt real, right?
Yes.
Like they screwed up, they killed these nationals of a different country, and now they kind of have to respond to it. And the king is right here, so they're trying. Like everything felt very. You had the political kind of intrigue of it, right? Like this is basically an international diplomatic incident, and the Avengers are responsible. So all of that, like kind of, even if you're siding with Cap, you can't help but be like, but look at what happened. Like Iron Man does have a point, and his motivations, like you were saying, they make sense. He's not just opposing Cap because you read the comic and one opposes the other. But no, like you see his battle with accepting what happened, and his consciousness, right? Like the conversation he has with the mother, like kind of like the surrogate for I think Damien is the name of the kid.
And then it's Miriam
comes-
Sharp, right? That's the character. This is the point in the comic books that sets Tony Stark off, and we get that mimicked right in the movie.
It was great. I thought it came off very sincere. When you see Batman fighting Superman, I compare it to you're just seeing two action figures kind of smashing together on the screen because you don't know these guys. This is the first time you're seeing Affleck as Batman, and you only saw Superman once, and he didn't convince me he was Superman. You know what I mean? With these guys, you had that time to get to know them and like them as characters, and you saw how they had a conflict at first, then they became a team, and now they're going to conflict. They're going the whole they're coming full circle again back to conflict, and there's more weight to when Captain is trying to argue with Iron Man, or really I felt there was more the other way around. Like Iron Man is trying to convince Captain, and you get that frustration that he's like, he's bringing me back a good point, but I need to convince him like this is the right thing. He even says like, I want to punch you in your teeth.
Perfect teeth. Yeah.
Because he's stubborn because he believes he's right. And in fact, they mentioned something that's right out of the comic when he mentioned something about how, I forget the exact line, but he says, if the whole world is telling you to move and you just plant your feet down and you say, no, you move. I believe that's right out of the comic. Not the main event, but one of them. I remember that line specifically. I know
cool. Was it Sharon Carter as well that delivered it?
I don't think it was Sharon Carter. I think, if I remember correctly,
that's a Cap line out of a Spider-Man tie-in, I think.
I believe you're right. But that line, like the line is exactly like the world is telling you to move, and you're telling the world to move. That is right out of the comic, which I like that because there's quite a few differences, right? Like I remember I joked on Twitter that like when the trailer came out and it was pretty different from what we saw in the comics, I was like, oh yeah, the trailer based on the trailer, Civil War is going to have a lot of things in common with the comic book, like the name and a bunch of other stuff, I'm sure, because it was quite different, which is necessary because it's a different world they created, right?
Yeah.
But to keep like dropping these little things about the movie, like the fact that Iron Man went to to Spider-Man to recruit him, very much like it happens. He gives him a suit upgrade, very much like it happens in the comic. Not exactly the same way, but you constantly like it's them saying, "Look, we know the material. Don't worry. We're kind of
we've been reading this.
We're Marvel.
We're changing things around because we have to. But don't worry, we got your back. Like you like the comics, we like them too. Here's what we can put in.
Exactly.
It still makes sense.
And with Tony and Cap here on opposite sides, like Cap is coming at this from very much a soldier. So he's a trained man. He's used to dealing with death. He knows you go into a fight with soldiers, there's going to be collateral damage both on your side and the other, and to the civilian side. Where Iron Man's coming from a perspective of, and I think that he's felt guilty since Iron Man 1 when he found out that his missiles were being used by the bad guys, by the enemy, to target civilians. So we've seen an overall evolution of Tony Stark's character to the point now where he feels so much remorse and so much guilt towards what he's done that he's funding MIT students, all their projects, right? He says that this is just to alleviate my guilt a little bit. And Cap's coming at this from like, we can't save everyone. We just have to save as many people as we can. So that's very much a soldier talking.
Yeah.
Very pragmatic, right?
Yeah.
He's like, look, here's the reality. Sometimes we can't save everybody. Sometimes it's just going to happen that way. Whereas Iron Man is being a little bit more idealistic. I think like, no, we should try more. Maybe we can find a better solution than this, right? Even though he's not coming out and saying that this is the perfect solution, he wants as close as perfect, and that means as close as to fewer casualties as possible.
He says in Age of Ultron, right? It's, we fight so we don't have to fight tomorrow. And he's all about ending the war, right? And he even goes back to when he was selling weapons. Father said it, the best weapon is one you never have to fire. I said the best weapon is one you only have to fire once.
Yeah.
And so
Which was a great line.
Yeah, it is,
Great line.
It's all about ending the war, where Captain America, and this comes from a little bit of a darker place in Age of Ultron when he goes to his flashbacks, is he does not know how to be a normal civilian outside of war.
Right.
He grew up in the 1940s, so big war, he goes to war, becomes Captain America, is frozen, comes back into war, the Chitauri, and then he becomes with S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that. So he's never known anything different. So he's coming at this from, this is my life, this is how I know how to operate. I'm out there protecting people, that's what I do. And I don't want anyone handcuffing me, because that's also alluded to in Winter Soldier, is that, S.H.I.E.L.D. is pointing Captain America at things, kind of guiding him, and he gets tired of that. Again, they're very different ideologies, and you can see why they're conflicting. Tony's evolving a bit, where Cap's, like you said, this pragmatic character.
And it's funny because if you think about it, it's sort of like a very similar thing that happened in Batman vs Superman. You have one who's just angry and wants to prevent more catastrophes, right? But you have the other that sort of like, he caused it, but it's sort of inevitable. Like, I just really enjoy the fact that, and maybe that's what kind of like didn't do it for me with Batman vs Superman, because they explore with the same kind of like, this guy is just angry at what happened. This guy, he wants more accountability. He wants somebody to be held accountable. And the other one is like the most, it's going with a completely different vision, more like shit happens kind of perspective. In Civil War, the fact that that conflict plays out to its conclusion without like okay, we figured this out, let's like kill Doomsday now, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It didn't feel like
I'm so happy that didn't happen in this.
Right? Like it didn't have like one big baddie. It's like, no, we have to work this out. So when one is arguing with the other, and they're trying to, like, there's several instances in the movie when Iron Man is like trying to talk to Cap, like, look, this is what we need to do, like, this is necessary, and Cap is saying, no, like, we can't do that because of this. Both make sense. You feel like the conflict and that divide, and because they both make sense, they're both making good points, and you've known these characters for a while, it has just so much more weight to it. You know, like there's a moment later in the film where Iron Man is legit hurt at what Cap is doing, and then he starts lashing at him like in anger. Like at first they're kind of like, you can see the punches are being pulled
held
for a
back
while,
little, yep.
But then they just go
trying
like,
to kill each other.
Yeah.
yeah,
to
like it's
disable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're trying to like, but then it gets to a point where they're like really going at it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that feels real. That feels like two friends who've been trying to make this work, but for whatever reason they couldn't see eye to eye, and now like the stakes are higher, and the battle is just like, you don't know what could happen here, right? Because as we know, at not the end of Civil War, but going with the next thing that happens in Civil War is that Cap ends up dying. And I was wondering if they would go that route with this movie.
Well, if you listen to episode 19, that's the way I thought. I would have bet an enormous amount of money that's the way they're going to go, is the death of Captain America. I was waiting for that, and that's the only thing I would say that detracted from the movie for me, was I was waiting for that to happen. I was waiting for them to set that up, and that's my own fault. That's just because I'm so immersed in the comics that I was waiting for something big to happen.
It seemed to make sense, right? Like that would be a big, like, these movies. I like this because there's like an unusual cliche in like not comic books, but sorry, in I guess comic books to an extent, but in cartoons this is more frequent. A situation is presented, everything goes crazy, and at the end everything is resolved and everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
The MCU, I like how things are actually changing. Like the events at the end of Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. was no more. Like this is a big change in the status quo of that universe, right? Because the Avengers team is different now. Like Thor is and the Hulk, they're not really Avengers at this point anymore. They're just kind of like off doing whatever.
Yeah.
And that's something that's right through the comics, right from issue like 4, is that this roster is constantly evolving, constantly changing, and they're bringing that into this. This is an event movie, and coming out of events, when you akin them to comic books, the status quo should be changing. It should be completely different. We shouldn't have, the events we don't like the most in comic books are the ones that have zero consequences. Is that you go into them, something happens, everyone's out, and then you get just the same comic books coming out the other side. This is completely different when we end this movie. This movie goes through a massive evolution of characters, and each and every character that's in it gets their own little small evolution, small little narrative push into the next movie, into phase 3. And then we get General Ross, who's now Secretary Ross, which I think was a great callback to the Incredible Hulk series. One series that's not particularly tied in very well to the Marvel.
No, it's pretty much one of the biggest, like, watch it or maybe don't. It's totally fine. Yeah. It's totally fine. You don't have, which kind of sucks because I love
Actually, I like that one.
It's a good one, yeah. So then we find ourselves in Vienna. We get the Wakandans coming out to the forefront and really supporting the Accords. And then we have this explosion right after we get the introduction of T'Challa as well. And this explosion later is revealed to be Zemo, who is, again, Sokovian now, not kind of your German Hydra character. But he's kind of facilitating a lot of this and causing a lot of this. And we see the death of T'Chaka and essentially the framing of Winter Soldier, which sets off the whole Black Panther Winter Soldier arc into this movie. And they don't wait very long to get to Black Panther out of this, which is amazing. They didn't wait till the end to show you Black Panther.
Thank goodness.
Right out of the gate. So we get this massive bombing and then essentially the hunt for the Winter Soldier, for Bucky. Bucky, again, he's been hiding a lot since Winter Soldier. He's got his memories back, and they show this at the start that they need this programming to be occurring for him to become the Winter Soldier. And without that, he kind of remembers who he is. And we get Steve Rogers and everyone looking for the Winter Soldier now, because he's been missing for the last 2 years. This event flushes him out. First, we get Captain America approaching and finding Bucky. And then we get this awesome scene where we have basically the duo of Captain America and Bucky fighting these soldiers, or these SWAT team or whatever they are, down the stairwell.
Wow.
And how good is that? We get a lot of use of Bucky's of the arm. Yeah. And we get a lot of like Captain America being like, you can't kill anyone. And Bucky's like, well, I'm not going to kill anyone. And then there's a couple of scenes where Cap catches a guy and he's like, come on, man.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Still humor in there, right?
No,
it's great.
That scene, I think that scene was great in a lot of ways. Like, first you see that there's the action, right? That's the most superficial, like, oh, it looks great on, like, it's exciting, right? Yeah. But you also have, like, this is a big move for Cap, like, because he's basically siding with somebody who everybody believes to be a terrorist. Yeah. Like, that's like the terrorist coming to arrest, like, the police coming to arrest, like, a terrorist, and you're in the house, that's bad enough, and then now you're fighting back the cops to save this guy's ass. So, like, the whole time, like, it's a great scene. Like, there's some humor, like you're saying, like, oh, come on, man. Like, he's trying to, like, minimize the damage that's being caused. But at the same time, story-wise, it's like, this is a big, like, he just screwed up right now. Because how do you explain that? Like, you're essentially siding with the terrorists. Like, aiding and abetting a guy who killed the king of a country, right? Like, how is this going to look? So the whole time, I'm like, this is a great scene. But this is also, like, this is a serious move.
Big turning point. And just, like, drawing that line, right? This
exactly. Like, you just crossed a huge line here. Like, what's going to happen now, right?
And like Black Widow alludes to that, it's like, just stay out of this, Cap. You know, it's just going to get worse by you getting involved. And he says, what, are you going to arrest me?
Right.
And that kind of starts that whole evolution of, because Black Widow's playing kind of both sides, right? She's
which makes perfect sense for the character.
Personal relationship with Cap, but also she's kind of seeing on the other side, right? She's been kind of with Stark at the point, even to the point going to the Vienna conference to ratify all the Accords. And so you see her playing both sides, and I love that fight scene. And that's when you get the Black Panther coming into this. How good does his costume look?
His costume's incredible.
It looks amazing. Yeah. It looks like... It's funny because you see that the costume is some kind of armor, right? Because bullets,
vibranium,
it is vibranium, right? Yeah. But also you have kind of like, you know, the necklace with like the teeth, like they did like a stylized, like it's not an actual necklace with actual teeth, but you can see like it sells you the idea that this is like a traditional like Wakandan thing that in the past, say like 50 years before, it was just like a guy wearing like a suit, and over time, because Wakanda is like a very technologically advanced nation, over time, like what was just like some guy in a suit eventually became kind of like when you think of like you read Spider-Man 2099.
Oh yeah.
Right, so like the suit, it's like it's enhanced, it has all these other things. That's kind of like how I feel that is. Like this would be like this Black Panther is to the original Black Panther what Spider-Man 2099 is to the original Spider-Man, like Peter Parker, right? Like it's kind of like the same lineage, same name, same mission, same mantle, but a bunch of upgrades because it's 2016, right? So I thought it looked amazing. The fight scene was great. He really sells it that this guy is a warrior. Like this guy is a
Exactly.
force to be to be reckoned with. He's a tank.
Yeah, he's incredible, and he's swift on his feet. You can notice when guys are hopping here and there, you can hear the sounds. But him, he's light on his feet. You can't even hear this guy move. You know, it's kind of very reminiscent of the T-1000. How he's just constantly chasing these guys down. Right?
No, that chase scene was great.
Incredible.
That whole all through the tunnel and all that, and you get the three of them chasing each other, and they all have some sort of enhancement, and they're jumping over cars and running past cars.
Flipping motorcycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the Winter Soldier at one point he knocks a guy, grabs the motorcycle, and kind of like spins around and jumps on it. You got to take from like the top to like see what he was doing. Probably a little bit of stunt work doing that. Whenever I see like a camera cut like that, they're trying to get from different angles. I always imagine like they rigged up some kind of like practical effect, and they're just really trying to show it off and see it from other angles and stuff like that. So you have the guy spinning the motorcycle, jumping on it, and with the Black Panther right behind him, and Cap trying to like diffuse the situation, get his buddy back. At that point, he's pretty much screwed because now there's like it became a much bigger thing at this point. So I don't really know what he was hoping to even achieve once the fight got to that level. Like you guys are all going to jail. Like there's no way around this.
Yeah.
And they do eventually get caught.
Right.
And we have quickly, which I did not think was going to happen this early, the reveal that T'Challa is the Black Panther.
Yeah, that was great. They didn't waste any time. They just
at
did
one
it.
point, Falcon's fine. He's like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Yeah.
And then not too far after, we have him taking off the mask.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more of an Iron Man thing, or it was going to like flip down or whatever. But it was kind of cool. It was just a helmet.
I think it's good that they went that route because you got already two characters that have that kind of like super mechanized, like, So if another one, I think it might cause a little bit of what they call consumer confusion.
Yeah.
Where like now this this guy's like he's kind of like an Iron Man too. Like is this his power too? Can he fly too?
Exactly.
So it distinguishes the two because you already have two guys who are wearing suits.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense that let's go a little bit different.
Yeah,
with
and
this
adds to him being like that agile, swift kind of character as
Yeah.
opposed to that robotic,
And you see that in
heavy.
his fight sequences too when he's out of the suit. He's doing
Yeah,
a
he
lot
can
of
still-
legs, a lot of like very nimble jumping around,
Yes,
and
yes.
high impactful hits. It's really cool. What do you think of their accents, the Wakandan accents?
I liked it. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a little more heavy, a little more strong, like thicker. But it's just kind of light. But I liked it. It worked for the character. Chadwick Boseman just knocked us out of the park.
This guy, he's unreal in that
He's
role.
incredible. I just can't wait to see a standalone.
Right, as I was seeing this, it's like, it was coming back to me. Yeah, we're gonna get to see a standalone Panther movie. I was like, this is great.
It's basically a backdoor pilot, if you will, use that phrase, to Black Panther. But it felt so organic in the movie. Like, this makes sense why he would be here and why he's around and why he's chasing after Winter Soldier. And it just didn't feel like it was shoehorned in. Like, oh, hey, Black Panther's coming in 2018 or 2017, whenever it's coming. Just remember, this felt like, even if there wasn't a Black Panther movie, that felt like it should be in there. That made sense.
Yeah.
Not to mention, one thing that I loved about the Black Panther, and really any new, like, super-powered person that shows up in these stories, it's very much like in the comic at this stage, because now we have a world where, like, at first, like, wow, Iron Man, wow, oh, Captain America, the Hulk, like, that's great. But now it's gotten to a point where it's like, oh, there's some new crazy, like, have you seen this? There's some new guy.
Yeah.
And then nobody really knows who this guy is, what he can do.
Right.
Like, if he's like a legit superhero or he's just some crazy dude with a suit or whatever, we don't know this. In the comic, you see that all the time.
Yeah.
When Spidey runs up into like a new villain, he's like, oh, who are you supposed to be? Like, what's up with you?
Yeah, the villain of the week.
Exactly, villain of the week, right? So like that works in that world. The MCU now, as like this fictitious universe, that works just like in the comics. Like some new guy is like kicking ass and wearing a suit. And we're like, well, let's try to kind of figure out what this is. Like, if this were to even happen, I think in Avengers, where you have just some, say Black Panther shows up in the Avengers, I think there wasn't enough setup for us to buy that this. Oh, wait up! Like this guy, like let's try to figure out who this is. Now with everything that we've seen so far, and you have the idea of like the quote unquote miracle, so like they've already established that like there's superpowered people that were like experimented on.
Yeah.
It works now for like, and the same thing with Stark figures out about Spider-Man and goes after him, and same situation, like we live in this world where people have special abilities and a lot of them are choosing to do good with them, right? And we're kind of running into them, right? And same way like some choose to do not so good with them, right? So I like that. I like that it works like in the comics now. Like it makes sense if they introduce a new character.
The groundwork's there to
it's established.
fully accept a new character.
It doesn't seem like, where did this guy come from? Like it works.
It'd be like if you went back to Iron Man, all of a sudden threw Thor and Black Panther into that movie, you're like, whoa, what is happening here?
No, this is a little too crazy, right? Too early. So no, I like that. I like that it's very much like in the comics. They can introduce a guy, not even tell us a whole bunch about it, but you're sold.
Yeah. And what was cool about his reveal too, my wife leaned over to me in the movie theater and said, "Did we know that T'Challa was Black Panther?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, as a comic
book,
reader, yeah, of course."
Yeah.
But you, who's never seen that, that's a cool reveal to see. Like, oh, okay, now I get why he's so pissed off and he's chasing Bucky.
Exactly.
And it kind of really fit, and I thought it was a cool experience to have as someone that didn't know who Black Panther was. And it's like, that's really, really cool that that's who it is.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that because I was just looking through the eyes of somebody who knows the character.
Exactly.
So like, oh yeah, T'Chaka, his son, and he got killed. Obviously, Black Panther wants to kick his ass. Like, it makes perfect sense. But like you're saying, like we are accepting that these movies are made for people who watch all the other movies, but a lot of people don't know Black Panther, right? So for somebody who's even like, you have the box sets, you have the action figures, you love the MCU, maybe the Black Panther is a complete like unknown for you.
Well, and he's someone that's never really even been alluded to, and there's been some little hints.
He's
maybe
Voltron,
there's
Wakanda.
Wakanda, yeah. I thought he was actually going to be when
I know. Yeah, I thought so too.
But it was kind of cool that they held it off, right? They've been seeding this a little bit, and they've got the announcement of the movie.
And that's how you do it right.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, let's build this. And we don't even... The great thing about this is that this is a Spider-Man origin movie. This is the Black Panther origin movie. Yeah. We can just run in their when they get to their solos. We don't need to go... Yes, they're going to go back and revisit it, whether it's in the credits or a flashback or something. But... It's something that we can go in and be like, I know that guy from Civil War, like for non-comic book readers, and I really liked him in Civil War. His costume was awesome. He fought awesome. I'm gonna go check this movie out. Black Panther is kick-ass.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be like, go back and say, oh, we need to tell, 30 years, 40, 50, 100 years of Wakandan history and go through this. We just jump straight into this, that T'Challa is now the king of Wakanda. He is a Black Panther, and we'll talk about the end credits scene a bit, about how that all evolves into his own movie. Yeah. But like my wife was like, he's one of the best characters in the movie. Like,
he was absolutely great. He was absolutely great. His motivation was on point. His fighting, the suit, everything about him was great. Everything, and even how he turns around and realizes that he was going down a dangerous path. Yeah. Everything was well handled.
It wasn't because he realized that someone's mother was the same name.
Martha.
Oh my God! Don't even get started on that. Oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's great how they handle things. Even Spider-Man, where Stark's like, well, how did this power happen? And he's like, it's a long story, and he's about to get into it, and then Stark kind of interrupts him. He's like, you know what? We don't need to hear about it, which is great. It's kind of fan service. We already know the whole Spider-Man origin.
It's great.
It's awesome.
It's like when one thing like Spider-Man was just an absolute joy.
Such a hit.
So great. Like the fact that one thing that I enjoy, not just about Spider-Man, but how they're constantly just like the comics, they're fighting and then talking. Everybody kind of like, like not only him, but like with one thing that I just enjoyed so much. There's this trope called lampshade hanging. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that.
No.
Maybe the listeners aren't either. So basically, lampshade hanging is when in a story, like a movie or a series, comic book, whatever, there's something that it doesn't make sense in the story, right? Instead of ignoring that, the character himself will draw attention to that. So one example, very recent, it's like a very out there example, is when Deadpool, you guys saw, of course, he goes into the Xavier mansion, and he's like, it's funny how it's every time it's all just you two here. That's called lampshade hanging. Like,
that's awesome.
We will notice that. It's so weird that's done too, but the character is addressing that. It's a way of the filmmakers to say, hey, we know, okay, we know you're gonna joke about it, but we're aware of that.
That's awesome.
And in Civil War, one thing that I really like is that when Spidey comes on, and then what did he say? He's like, he sees Cap throwing the shield, and he's like, that thing doesn't follow the laws of physics at all. I love that. I love that.
That's great. That's great. They used it a couple of times. Even when Stark first meets Spider-Man, it's kind of a play on words where he's like, I've been expecting you for quite some time. It's kind of like the fans have been wanting Spider-Man to meet the Civil War or the Avengers for quite some time.
Yeah, it's like a nod to the fans.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, did you get the emails? Which is kind of like the Sony email hacks. You know what I mean? It's
That's
awesome.
funny. I love like they establish so much without having to say much. Like, because the kid, like Spider-Man, from the beginning of the story, he's just a loser. He doesn't have much money. He's always like, he was picked on at school and everything. Yeah. And you see this character for like his little world for so little, right? You see May, which by the way, hot Aunt May. Yeah. I was not prepared for that. Makes perfect sense because he's a young kid. He's not going to have a 78-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But and then they call it out in the movie. Like, this is an unexpectedly hot ad. So
exactly. I love that. See, again, lampshade hanging. They're like, they're pointing out, like, you'll notice that. And like, we every Aunt May we've ever seen was an older lady, like a matronly lady. All of a sudden, it's Marisa Tomei looking better than ever. So you're like, is this like cousin May? Like, what's going on here, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it was great. But then you go into his room.
Pregnancy, my man.
Yeah. So you go into Spider-Man's room, and one thing that really jumped out at me is that it's very barren. There's nothing in the room, right? There's no pictures. There's no because he's a poor kid.
Yeah.
And if you go into a poor kid's room, that's what you're gonna see, like some old crap that he dumped, took out of the dumpster.
Yeah, old, like ancient computer.
Exactly, like
an old Mac.
an old Mac that he's just tinkering with, and it's just. It makes a lot of sense. Like they're telling you. At first, it bothered me. Like the set dressing here kind of sucks. Like there's nothing around. But like that's if you're going to some poor kid from the Queen from Queens, you go into their room. That's kind of what's gonna look like, and it makes sense. He's just a broke kid trying to do some good with the powers he's been given.
Yes.
And we kind of get the crash course into with great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly.
Like
Right
they didn't
there,
have to say it.
No.
But they explain, like, if I can do these things and I don't, and something bad happens, it's my fault. He just explained to you the mythos of Spider-Man, why the kid is behaving that way. He's telling you this is a good kid.
Yeah.
He didn't have to you didn't have to sit through like this older Uncle Ben explain to him and giving him the little talk. He just he knows that maybe that happened off camera, but. As an audience, you are sold the idea. This is a good kid. This is why it's believable. His acting is pretty good. It sells
great.
it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Just a
And
joy.
like, for a kid that age, and he's been in a few things and he's good, but to hold his own bantering with Robert Downey Jr., that's like that was one of the most uplifting scenes in the entire. Like the whole theater was howling during that scene, and this is at a real point in the movie. Like if you look through the whole, like from this point up until we get into Spider-Man, it's a bit darker toned, right? We're dealing with a lot of darker issues,
terrorism,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like this
like
the
very
government-
real
yeah,
issues.
When there's an explosion in was Geneva with
Vienna,
Vienna, yeah. When the explosion happens, then you see people like first responders scrambling and like news coverage. It's very contemporary, right? Like because the fear of terrorism is something that we see it. It's present. It's happening right now. So when it happens in movies, it was very different from like when that happens in movies like in the 90s, as opposed to now. It sells you the idea like this is like it grounds it in reality because this is a fear that we experience, right? Like in the world today, and it's a situation that's very real. Turning on the TV and you see rubble and the ticker saying like attack wherever, we can relate to that, right?
Exactly.
So like you're saying, it makes it plays on a fear that we have, like this is a world we live in. These things happen not by super powerful individuals, but they happen nonetheless, right? So as you're saying, the movie, I love that. That's one thing I have to mention. The tone of the movie it's pitch perfect because you have like the seriousness, you have the conflict, the emotional thing, Cap and Iron Man like not seeing eye to eye, and you see that things are escalating. Towards the end, there's an even bigger reason for them to hate each other, right? Or at least one of them hate the other. Yeah. And then you have the little jokes here and there. You have like the comic relief, and it works so well. This is something that Marvel they knocked it out of the park with the first Avengers, and it continues. Like this trend is great,
and it's more so than other movies. They've really captured that Civil War aspect, the really emotional, personal aspect of it, and then we get to this more recruitment scene.
Yes.
Where we get a lot more of this comedy being weaved into the story, and that really uplifted me because this was at a point where I'm thinking I'm really, really enjoying this, but it's a lot darker than other Marvel movies. And then we get to the Scott Lang stuff, Spider-Man stuff.
Ant-Man shows up.
Ant-Man is great.
And
like
the
he's
whole
there for a
airport
little,
scene.
Just enough.
He's just enough, but it's great. Like the thing with he throws the truck. It's like, oh, I thought that was a water truck.
Yeah.
That's great. That's such a great line.
That's incredible.
It's a simple joke.
Yeah.
It fits the character. He's like kind of new to all this. He's screwing up, screwing up as he goes along.
He's fanboying as he goes.
Oh, shaking Captain America's hand.
Captain America.
Like, I'm shaking too
man,
long. I know
love
you
that.
too. You're great. It's great. Like that's the thing. You get this character, right? He's not going to do a whole bunch because this is not an Ant-Man movie. But he shows up. His fight is cool. He's doing some cool stuff. He obviously knows a little bit more about how to use the suit, so he's a little bit more, more able at it.
Yeah.
And you got that banter, the comic book stuff, right? Like
So
the
well.
joking, like throwing punches but making jokes and cracking wise.
Yeah.
One thing I loved is when he shrinks and he goes into
Iron Man.
I'm in suit.
Yes.
And he's talking, then he's like, who's there? And he's like, oh, it's your conscience.
Yeah.
We don't talk too much these days. And then one little detail, like some acting detail that I noticed that I just absolutely love. He's like, oh, you're going to have to take this into the shop. Yeah, this is bad. And he kind of like pauses. Like if you watch again, notice this. Like watch for the next time. He's going to deliver the line and then he kind of like breaks and then like says it again. Like he's kind of like making that up as he's going.
Oh, okay,
I love it. Watch,
That's
pay
awesome.
attention when
Nice.
he says that.
Nice.
That line when he's like, oh, you're going to have to, you have to take this to the shop.
Yeah.
Because he's like wrecking
That's
Iron
awesome.
Man's suit from inside, and it's great. Like that scene, like you have all the like more serious stuff and more grounded in reality, and then you get to that scene that's like a big set piece that is fun, and you got the jokes, and you got Spider-Man swinging
Oh,
around and
boy.
making Star Wars references, by the way.
Empire Strikes Back
Yes.
at that. Like,
Right,
Oh,
right?
man, that's
that
right out of
really
Empire Strikes Back.
old movie.
That was-
Like,
Yeah.
where is it? The
Oh.
Where
newest
did
guy.
you get this
Yeah.
kid? How
Which is
young this?
exactly
Oh,
what you
good.
hear in the comic book. Like in the comic book, you
That's
hear,
him. That's Spider-Man.
It's great. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
That was
It's incre- and Anthony Mackie, I gotta give props to this guy because his chemistry with everybody has been so well since the first Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
You know, him calling Tic Tac to Ant-Man, or
Yes.
him and Bucky. Can you move your seat up?
Yeah.
You know, that was
Yes,
hilarious,
And,
yes.
right?
and even Bucky, that whole scene, and they're both sitting there after when he makes out
Yeah.
Chef Ever, because this happens before the airport battle, and they're
Yeah.
both sitting there like, yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Because
come
they're
on.
both his friends,
that
right?
was
They
it.
love
And again,
that, right?
these guys are just having an
Yeah.
Marvel. This is brilliant because in other movies, this would be a tonal change that might like just lose the audience.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is too like it's kind of like okay again. We have to keep bringing up BVS because it's also a team up movie that is what we just saw before this, right? So you can't help but notice the compare and contrast,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
So in BVS when they try a little bit of a joke like that, when he's like, "Oh, I thought she was with you,"
Yeah,
kinda
she
like
was
a little
you.
joke.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fit quite right because the
No.
movie's too drab. It didn't allow itself to be that,
No.
that
Yeah.
you know, that
Didn't-
levity now.
Yeah, and the
it's-
universe they already established is just so serious.
Yeah,
right?
I appreciate the attempt. I definitely do. Like they use it in the trailer, of course, because they thought it was like, hey, let's put the funny bit in the trailer.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't work as well as it worked with Marvel.
No,
you know
no,
what I mean? Like,
but even Thor 2, you know, a lot of the humor in there was kind of off too. Age of Ultron a little bit, they kind of failed. Here they nailed it. But again, you got to give up to the Russo brothers for doing this, right?
Because it came in at the right point, right?
Yeah.
We had, like I said, you had this very serious movie, and then all of a sudden you bring in the right characters to be funny.
Yes.
This wasn't Captain America. This wasn't Vision
that would be so
trying
out
to
of
be
place.
funny.
Exactly. Yeah.
This was characters that are supposed to be comedic.
Or Batman trying to be funny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like those characters are very serious. Some of them. In Falcon, you get him. He does the quips and stuff like that
good
too.
at that.
And
He's
one
so
of the
good.
lines I loved was
I know the one.
when Spider-Man and
I-
Bucky
yeah.
are
Yes.
going,
Yeah.
and then he goes, "Is that stuff coming out of you?" Like that was a direct reference to the original Spider-Man trilogy.
Yeah, the organic webbing.
Exactly.
I love that. And then when he uses his little, was it Redbird?
Yeah,
to take
Red
his
Wing,
Spider-
Red Wing.
Red
Yeah.
Wing. And then Bucky's like, you could have done this the whole time?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, that's awesome.
And he's just like
Again,
I-
lampshade hands.
Yes,
like they're
right?
pointing out the silliness of it.
Exactly.
and their chemistry is great. Like I hate you.
What did he say before? He says something. He
It
makes
was,
a
it
comment.
was the Red Wing thing. Like you could have
Yeah,
done that
yeah,
from
yeah.
the start.
Yeah,
Why didn't
yeah,
you do that
I
from the
love
start?
that.
I hate it.
I love that. Yeah, and even though we saw in the trailer 50 times, when Spider-Man catches the metal arm, dude, you have a metal arm? Like,
Yeah.
it's just so Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I love
Yes,
it.
and he has, even somebody comments this again with the lampshade hanging. They're like, "You're not supposed to be talking like you're new
Yes,
to this. You're not
Falcon.
supposed to be talking this much when you're fighting."
Yeah, yeah.
Have
it's
you
the
ever
first
been in a fight before?
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Just right out of the
And
comics.
asking about like the wing, how the wing is made and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
This is very like again a kid who's a nerd who has an interest in science. He's now thrust into this universe and he's curious about what he's seeing.
Yeah.
So it's great. Like there's this earnestness to the character, right? Like he's a good kid. He's trying to do well.
Yeah.
And he's like he even says like, "Oh, I'm just trying to like what did he say?"
I'm
He says
trying to
something-
impress Mr. Stark.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
It makes
It's
perfect sense.
awesome.
He just been given like a suit that probably is worth like millions of dollars.
Yeah.
He's trying to do well by Stark, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
perfect.
And Captain America calls it out. Where are you from, kid? Queens. Me, I'm Brooklyn. You have a big heart.
And
you
then,
know,
and
Cap
then
knows
right
it.
away, like
Yeah.
you see that connection, right?
Yes.
Like, even though they're on opposite sides, he just took his shield.
Yeah.
But like when he sees that connection, like he doesn't know who the kid is, he can't see his face, right? But he's like, he's from kind of like my neck of the woods, he's from New
Yeah.
York as well. So
He's
it's
trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
I get like that's very Steve Rogers. Like I know
Yes.
this kid. He's trying to do the right thing. He's just got the wrong person talking to
Right.
his ear, or at least Cap thinks so, right?
Right.
Yeah, I
So
love
it's all
that,
about
yeah.
influences there. All right, guys. Izzy had to jet,
Yes.
but he did lay down his final verdicts. I'm going to splice that in at the end so you can hear how he thought the movie turned out. He gives his rating as well as his recommendations. But Troy and I are going to take you through the rest of the movie here. I know we kind of stopped a little bit in the middle of the airport battle scene, so we're going to pick up there and we're going to kind of run through it here and go with kind of the end reveal, some of the end credit scenes, and where we were as far as our predictions.
Yes.
So if you're looking for Izzy's recommendation and his rating, you'll find that right at the end of the episode. Thank you, Izzy, for coming on and laying down some of the framework here for the podcast.
Absolutely. Always appreciate it. And we'll see you here next time, I'm sure.
So as we get into this airport battle, you know, we've talked a lot a bit about the big stuff. Not the biggest thing, but the big stuff here is finally bringing in some of this comedy and the fighting. And it wasn't as intense of a fight as we're going to see later on or as we saw at the start. This was very much a comic book fight. It was like this nice little interlude, a much more serious kind of political spy thriller movie.
Yeah.
And where we got to see a lot of these characters and got an update on some of the characters we hadn't seen so much. Like we hadn't seen a lot of Rhodey, we hadn't seen really a lot of Vision, Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Hawkeye.
Yeah,
was in
Hawkeye,
there.
yeah.
So it was nice to see those characters, and it was like a nice nod where it felt appropriate to bring these characters in at this point in time. And then when they left, because Stark says right to Spider-Man at the end, "You're done. You're done.
Yeah, get out of
right?
here."
And he's like, "You're down. You're done." Like, and so that was really cool. That it was like, "Okay, this is the end." And towards the end of this scene, we get Giant Man,
Huge.
literally huge.
Yeah, that's a great scene. And even rewinding a little bit back, this is an incredible scene when we have Hawkeye. I was about to say Hawkman. Hawkeye pulled the arrow and has Ant-Man right on the tip of it, right?
Yeah.
The arrowhead. That was great.
Yeah, I think it's Avengers 223.
Yeah, I nearly got out of my seat there for that one. There's a couple times that happened in this movie.
And it's funny because Paul Rudd, again, with his little quips, he says, "All right, Arrow Man, whatever you say." Like, and it's this cool acknowledgement. And you see this again when we get onto the rafter. That some of these guys don't know who each other are. And they're calling out again, okay, this is really weird. This guy's got bow and arrows, and we're fighting guys with guns and like very like trained assassins and soldiers and flying armored suits. This guy with a bow and arrow. So it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And what did you think of Giant Man, the CG and his presence?
I thought it was good. It was great. It was an awesome scene, and I liked kind of how he slowed down. His voice changed too to go along with it.
And it's very like this very lethargic kind of movement. And I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like he's going really slow, and he's like, I like how he acknowledged the fact, I've only done this once before, and I passed out.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's a kind of cool callback to the original comic when we had Goliath,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I enjoyed that, and this kind of all leads into the big conclusion of the scene where we have Falcon, Iron Man, and War Machine.
Yeah, chasing Bucky and Cap, which are not on the Quinjet. Just before that, we had Black Widow disabling Black Panther.
Yeah, a couple times there.
So she's kind of switching sides and being, I'm going to regret this. And lets them get on the Quinjet.
I like that because she says, you know what? I think she says, I'll help you find Captain America, but I won't help you bring him in.
Exactly.
So that was cool.
So yeah, we get the big chase scene here.
Yes.
And someone that we haven't talked a lot about, has a big impact on the scene, is Vision. So we see him a couple times in Avengers Mansion. Really cool that he's in like civvy outfit.
I like that because that's kind of like the cover of the new comics.
Exactly.
Where he's dressed up. Yeah.
And it's really cool. And he has some lines, but he's really a non-factor in this overall fight. I think him and Scarlet Witch battle at that, but they really acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And that plays into why Rhodey ends up getting shot. Which is fantastic, because they spice it in the trailer to make it look like Bucky actually took him out, right?
Yeah.
And it was a distracted Vision.
Yes.
And that's something that's acknowledged later on, is the fact that Tony says, like, I didn't think that could happen to you. And you see this because they're developing this, again, this comic book relationship of Scarlet Witch and Vision.
Which I didn't think they were going to go down that path, but
neither.
they're doing it, and it's kind of believable in a weird way.
And it's more of him crushing on her as opposed to her even acknowledging the fact that it's almost like the mind gem is he's developing into more of a human. He's has emotions and feelings, and he gets distracted by her being slightly injured.
Right.
And that's something that like a synthetic shouldn't be able to do. A computer shouldn't have emotions. And he's always processing. So it's cool to see that development of that character.
Yes.
And very subtly, like he's not even really in this movie that much.
No, not too much, no.
It was great to see that. And he takes out Rhodey.
Yeah. Which is crazy when to actually see Rhodey collapse and fall to the ground. And wow, you really got a sense of like, it'd be pretty terrifying being in that costume, power shutting down, you're flipping all over the place and just
it's like being in a rock.
Yeah.
When Iron Man, Tony Stark, is over top, it says, vitals. I thought they were going to say he's dead.
Yeah.
Don Cheadle's looking pretty old.
Yeah, he's kind of showing his age in this movie.
Yeah, a little bit.
Holy smokes. Yeah, he's kind of old. It's kind of interesting too, or it was neat to see Falcon. He's very sorry for what happened.
Yeah.
He comes to the aid, and
he was coming down with Iron Man to grab him.
And
right?
Iron Man was having no business with him. He
shot him.
Boom, shoots him away.
That must have hurt. Punched in the chest by a boxer or something.
Oh man!
But that was a cool way to end all of this. And again, what it essentially is that Team Cap gets captured.
Yeah.
We have Vision. Scarlet Witch is out.
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye's out.
Yeah.
Ant-Man's or Giant Man's down and out.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of definitive end. And it doesn't feel, again, like always coming back to this, it doesn't feel like, oh, why didn't they just bring everyone else? Like everyone's down and out. This fight is done. It's over. And all that you have left standing basically at the end is Iron Man.
Yeah.
But we see Team Cap on the raft.
Yeah, that's
and then we
right.
get the full acknowledgement by Tony Stark that, yes, I was wrong. I'm going to keep you guys all here in this jail cell because you guys, I'm still for the Pro Registration Act or the Accords or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And it's really cool going in there because he essentially kind of says to Falcon, like, look, tell me where they're going. I want to go and help them. Something that we haven't really talked about was this idea, and this was pulled out of Winter Soldier by Zemo, that there's other Winter Soldiers. And that, what I'd have to say, was the only point in the movie when I was sitting there that I said, they're gonna go down this path.
Oh, you could have done without it, eh? Yeah.
Well, and they twist it really quickly. They
Yeah.
don't really linger on it very much. But I thought what they're going to do is they're going to get there, and there's going to be all these super soldiers,
Yeah,
and
like
we're
the
going to
big
have
five.
and then we're going to have Iron Man, Cap, and Bucky fight them, shake hands, blah blah blah. Then I was thinking, like, are they going to like inject something in Iron Man and he becomes like an evil Iron Man? This is where my brain's going as the movie's progressing. And I'm like, they nailed it so far, but now they're going to go down and have like this almost like extremist soldier sort of thing.
Yeah, which would have been horrible.
And I was like, I do not want this, like just a cannon fodder to fight. And then we get to Siberia where Cap and Bucky are going to essentially to stop what they think is Zemo going to re-release these Winter Soldiers. So we do get a flashback scene to show how powerful these guys are. And then we get there and they're all dead. I was like, thank you, Russos.
Yeah.
You did not take the easy way out here. You did not take the path that just like, we just need someone for them to punch, like a Chitauri soldier or an Ultron bot or whatever.
Thank goodness, right?
And then we get the reveal here of what Zemo's actually after. He's a Sokovian, and he's just out for revenge.
Yeah.
What did you think of Zemo's motivation? Because some people were saying, oh, it's just another Marvel wasted villain, blah, 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 blah. What did you think about that?
I think he's very much different than any other Marvel villain we've ever had. And he's one of the few, maybe only Marvel villain that's actually won, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, he disassembled the Avengers. And I like that he wasn't this villain that had to go toe-to-toe with Iron Man or Captain America. He didn't have to develop some kind of costume or have some kind of power to fight these guys. That wasn't his weapon. You know, his weapon was his mind, and he used it very well, and he executed his plan.
All he wanted to do was, he kept talking about like empires falling and all that, and people think he's referring to the U.S. or something big, and he's just saying, no, the way to crumble an empire is to do it from within.
Yep.
And he's just trying to seed this doubt, this civil war, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's there to facilitate a lot of that.
Exactly.
Which I think is very, very well executed. I did not need Zemo with the cloth face, with the sword, facing off against Captain America at the end of this movie. I thought it was just very well executed. And then we have the big reveal. And we talked about this whole aspect of this concept of this 1991 this mission. They allude a bit to it in Winter Soldier, this concept that Howard Stark and his wife died in a car accident, and then right there they flash up a picture of Winter Soldier.
Right.
So I've always thought in my head, okay, Winter Soldier's had something to do with their death, and that makes sense, right? Howard Stark, one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D., fighting against Hydra in the war, post-war, Cold War, all that. So it makes sense that they would send him out to assassinate him.
Yeah.
And even in the Agent Carter series, Howard Stark is always kind of trying to develop another super soldier serum.
In that series, it's played obviously by the young Howard Stark?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Not John Slattery, which again is another great thing because he was in Ant-Man,
Yes.
he was in Iron Man 2,
Yep.
and so it's continually bring back this continuity, and these
Yes.
actors seem to be like, yes, I want to be in
Sign
that.
me up. I'm there. Yeah, I
Because
love
even
it.
Peggy Carter has kind of a cameo in the sense that her picture's there,
Yeah.
and then you have Sharon Carter, who again we haven't really talked much about.
Yeah.
She does not as impactful in this movie as she is in the comic book series, with the exception of that kiss and the
Yeah. I love that.
But we get the reveal that Winter Soldier is the one that's directly responsible for the death of Tony's parents. And Tony's particularly pissed at two aspects. One, that he killed his mom.
Yes.
Not his father. He's explicitly said, sorry. We haven't even talked about the Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, that scene.
The de-aging?
Right out of the 80s, Robert Downey Jr.? Oh my goodness. Because when they did this scene, he has, I think it's a Santa hat on or whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, they're going to use his voice, but they're going to cover his face, and we're never going to see it. He takes it off, and it's a young Robert Downey Jr. Wow.
This is the same thing they did to, what's his name? Hank Pym, or the actor.
Yeah, Michael Douglas. Yeah.
In Ant-Man. I was just like, I was looking at it, I was like, oh my, this is scary.
Right? Yeah.
What they can do.
Yeah, so job well done on that. But it establishes, where Robert Downey Jr.'s relationship is with his family, and especially his father at that time.
Yeah, and this, again, with his mother, like, he was pissed that he killed his mother. He didn't say, oh, you killed my parents. He says, he killed my mother.
Yeah.
And it's the aspect that Cap knew that Winter Soldier did this.
Yes.
That was never really established how he knew.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was, maybe it was one of these things either, Bucky told him, or it's just something he knew from the S.H.I.E.L.D. files.
Yeah,
or
while
whatever.
him and Falcon were looking, this is something he dug up. I thought it was very interesting because, if you go back into the comics, not necessarily this series, Civil War, but just in the comics in general, it's always Tony Stark that has the secret held back from Cap. Whereas it's very funny that this time they twisted it around and Cap's been holding the secret back the whole time from Tony. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was a good way to actually, because I was wondering, how are they going to get these three fighting again.
Yes, I was waiting for that.
Because they had really come around and come to some sort of truce, right? Because they're in that, and Winter Soldier's pointing the gun at him, and he says, all right, we're truce here. Like, stop pointing the gun at me.
Yeah,
like, we're
literally
good,
says
we're good.
that.
And that's where, again, my mind was going, like, how are they going to get them fighting again? And this is really one of the only ways. Like, I thought they were going to be fighting in the scene because, Iron Man does that look where he's got his bruised eye, and I thought it was going to be something more like, Bucky tried to kill me, so I'm trying to kill him.
Yeah.
This is so much more personal, right? And then they show the whole scene of Bucky killing his father, punching him in the leg. That was pretty violent.
Graphic.
Death. Yeah.
Strangles the mom without even his good hand with his... Oh, yeah, that was graphic.
And then we get this fight scene at the end. And, in contrast to the comic book where it's a massive fight scene and you see New York getting destroyed, heroes falling and injuries and all that, this is so personal.
Yes.
We saw in the trailer at least part of this.
Yeah.
And them throwing the shield back and forth. I want to see a Cap and Bucky movie.
Yeah.
Like, every single character that Bucky played with or that Falcon played, the chemistry was on. Like, it was so good.
Yeah, you could have done it any better. Yeah.
And the actor, Sebastian Stan, that plays Bucky, he's so good.
He's incredible. And, and he, much like the franchise, has grown each movie.
During that fight scene, we get one of the many scenes that I almost literally jumped out of my seat at. Like, I was on the edge for a lot of this movie.
Yeah.
But when we get the scene, when we have just the personal battle where Bucky gets his arm knocked off or whatever, and he's kind of down and out, and we get the Cap versus Iron Man fight. And we get that scene where we get Iron Man shooting the repulsor ray and Cap with his shield straight out of issue number 7, the cover of issue number 7 of Civil War, the comic book series. It's that. I damn near flew out of my seat and screamed.
Yeah.
Like a little girl at a Justin Bieber concert.
Yeah. That's the best way to put it. I was right there, man. I was jumping on my seat like, geez, this is intense.
And my buddy sitting next to me at the time, my buddy Brad, he sits there and he goes, I thought you were literally going to jump at me. He's like, I could hear you moaning.
It was fantastic. Like, they pulled that right out of the comic there.
Yeah, that was so... And there was a promotional image, I think, on Empire Magazine. And I never really put it together. I was like, that's kind of cool that they put that concept art together. But then to do it... And it was just this... It was like a slow-mo shot, and it was between two pillars. It was framed like it was a comic book. Had the shape and stuff. It was... I just about lost it.
Yeah.
And it was all I could do to contain myself.
I know. That was just amazing. That fight was so, like you said, personal.
And we get right down to it Friday. Iron Man's AI at the moment.
Right, yeah.
And she says, you cannot beat him hand-to-hand combat. You have to analyze his fighting. And then we get down to it, and Cap looks like he's going to be out.
Yeah.
I could do this all day.
I love that. I was waiting for it, too.
And eventually he gets the upper hand on Iron Man. Yeah. Knocks his helmet off. And he's got the shield above him. And there's that moment there where it's like, is he going to kill Iron Man? Right. Are we going to go the other way?
Yeah, right?
And then he just jams it in his chest.
Yeah. Jammed it hard, too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I mentioned this before about, because I was so convinced that they're going to do the death of Captain America, I was like, how are they going to get there from here? Like, how are we going to get to the point where Captain America just turns himself in? And that's a turning point, right? I'm going to kill Iron Man, and then he doesn't. Yeah. That's where you get that point. Same in the comics where he's like, I've gone too far.
Yeah. Classic Steve Rogers right there.
The other cool thing is when he basically says he jams the shield, he pulls it out, and he's walking away. He picks up Bucky, he's walking away with it, and Iron Man yells, "My father created that shield. You do not deserve that." And he drops it just the same way he did with his helmet in Civil War. At the end of Civil War, he says, "This isn't who I am," and he drops it. And I was just like, wow.
That was great.
And what a way to end that fight sequence. It's just, you're so invested in this. Like, I didn't want anyone to die at this point.
No.
I didn't, and you couldn't have done that. And it's just like, we're going to walk away now.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. We're done.
Exactly.
I'm done with you. We're both done with each other. We fought it out, and that was a pretty violent fight too.
Oh, it was gruesome. They're just bashing each other. You know what? That fight kind of reminded me a little bit of the Secret War, Civil War tie-in.
Yes,
how they're fighting. They're trying to kill each other.
Yeah. And that's the first point in the movie where I felt like someone was trying to kill the other one.
Yes.
Because a lot of the time it's more of this like disable and arrest or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
And this was like, we're like within inches of Cap taking his head off.
Just gruesome.
And I think Iron Man would have happily killed Bucky at that point too.
Oh yeah, definitely. At that point, yeah.
That basically brings kind of the culmination of the Civil War. And then we start to get the repercussions of a lot of this coming out of that, right? So, and something we didn't really talk about much was the fact that Black Panther was kind of present through some of this. He was kind of in the background because he wanted to go out and kill Zemo. Because he finds out that Zemo is essentially the reason why his father died. He killed his father, essentially.
Yeah.
And we get him actually saving Zemo from killing himself, because Zemo's done. Like, I've accomplished my mission. I've brought down the Empire from within. I'm done with this. And he's going to kill himself.
Yeah.
Black Panther doesn't. He doesn't let him.
Yeah, he saves him. Yeah, which was really interesting, because even Zemo, kind of admits, like, I'm sorry, I actually respected your father, and that was not part of the plan.
Yeah.
And it's very believable. I guess that's actually coming from a true place. So Black Panther finally turns his side. You kind of see a change in, a change of sides there at that scene.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
As we wrap all this up, we see Zemo essentially get transferred to the custody of this Everett Ross. Again, this is Martin Freeman's character.
Yes.
So we see him introduced, and I think he's going to be a little bit more like the Coulson of the MCU. He's going to pop up in a lot of movies.
I'm thinking so,
this government liaison.
Especially as it goes global. Yeah.
Exactly. And he's essentially, in the comic books, he's a liaison between Wakanda and the U.S.
Right.
And this, I think he's going to be more of a global liaison between maybe what Stark's team, whatever, if it's the Mighty Avengers or whatever comes out of this, and the governments in that. And so we see him almost antagonizing Zemo in this chamber, right? So not only do we get something that's a little different from Marvel's other movies, where we get this villain is still there, you could really see that he could get developed into something a bit more sinister as we go along. And did you get a little tweak of evil out of Everett Ross?
A little bit.
Yeah,
I did. You
see, there's something sinister about him.
Right.
It's like, something just not right here.
So I was going to be interested to see where they develop that with this character.
Yeah, it would be cool. Like, is he going to be Hydra or whatever?
That would be big.
Yet to see. And then as we go through this, we get kind of the repercussions and the results of what happened to Rhodey. Stark's building him the exoskeleton.
Yeah.
And then we get a fantastic Stan Lee cameo.
Oh, man.
Mr. Stank?
Yeah, the Tony Stank. The war machine, that's going to stick.
Yeah. He spoke a bit about this when he was at the Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo. He said my cameos in the Marvel movies are more safeguarded than the actual plot, so I can't tell you anything. I'd almost forgotten about it, and then when it came, I was like, yes!
Awesome.
And everyone's always just so excited to see him in those movies.
Stan the man. Yep, love it.
It's so great. So the package that Stanley's FedEx driver or whatever is delivering is from Captain America. And then we get a really nice voiceover of Captain America saying, I'm sorry that this is how it all ended, and this is the direction that we're going. And as we're getting this voiceover, we're getting this scene on the raft where it appears that Steve, which I thought it was Stephen Buggy, but it turns out it wasn't. Or maybe it was, because it was before he was frozen or whatever. But they've gone and rescued Team Captain America from the raft.
Yeah, I love that.
And one of the few things that actually came true out of our predictions was the Secret Avengers team.
Assemble.
It looks like it's going to happen. And, like I said, I really thought they were going down the road of Death of Captain America and all that. But you get Steve Rogers coming in. You see him looking at Falcon. You get the reflection in the mirror. And you see Chris Evans just smile. And I was like, to me, this is like Chris Evans smiling at the crowd like, I'm going to be back, guys. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere.
Yes, I love that, eh? That's exactly what it came off like.
Yeah. Because one of the consequences of doing Death of Captain America is you have to find some sort of trope or whatever to get him to come back to life for Infinity War.
Exactly. And it's something they've been doing so much in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is bringing people back from the dead. Yeah. So I guess it worked out better that way.
And just doesn't give any weight to anything. Like if they were to kill him here and then all of a sudden say, no, he's alive now, it kind of takes away from the movie. And it takes away from the consequences and the overall weight of a death of someone.
Yeah.
And I think that doing this way, although myself, I would have really liked to have seen that, it kind of works out well if Chris Evans is going to stick around as Captain America.
Definitely. So where do you see them going from this? Like Captain America, is he going to come back as Nomad, or what do you think? Because it seems like he's kind of dropped the mantle of Captain America.
Yeah, because he doesn't have the shield, so that would be interesting. And where is he going to pop up next?
Exactly.
Do you think he's going to pop up in, say, a Black Panther movie?
Right.
Are we going to see him trying to recruit other people? Or are we going to see him playing kind of a similar role to Robert Downey Jr. as he's kind of this side character or this nice cameo character that comes in that Ant-Man says, look, Cap, I gotta go. I gotta go with Wasp and do our thing.
Right.
And I'll call you if I need you, sort of. So you could have him playing that role again, where you see the two big dogs in the MCU are now taking a back seat to the other characters, but they're also still progressing this, because they very much seem like they're going to acknowledge the idea that we now don't have to worry about, why didn't you call Hulk? Why didn't you call Captain America? Because we're just going to fold all that into the movies now.
Exactly. Very much like how we're getting Robert Downey Jr. to kind of back up the Spider-Man verse, we can now probably get Cap to back up the Panther verse, right?
Exactly. And we see that in one of the after credits scenes, the first one. And it's quite a lengthy one, where we see Cap and what I'm assuming is the Secret Adventures are being
funded. Well,
that's the thing, because I was okay, now they don't have Stark. How do they get the tech and how do they get the funding? But it makes sense that the Wakandans are now providing asylum to the Secret Avengers,
Right.
as well as the funding and the technology.
Exactly.
That's a great scene. We see Bucky being frozen, which I wasn't a huge fan of. That was kind of one of the things I was like, it just seems like they don't know what they're going to do with him next, so we're going to remove him from the equation for now.
Yeah, essentially, because, you've had 2 movies, 2.5 movies almost, fighting, looking for Buck, right?
Yeah.
And then now here we are just kind of putting him in the way, putting him on the shelf.
Yeah. So he could pop back up in a Black Panther movie. How great would a Winter Soldier Black Widow movie be? Like a team up.
Oh,
because there's some allusion to that. Well, at one point, Bucky's got her on the ground and is kind of choking her. And she says, you know me. Which could be, you know me from the Winter Soldier.
Yes.
Or you know me from a Russian program that we were both a part
way
of.
back. Right.
So that could be cool.
Days. Yeah, that would be really neat. Yeah.
So we get Bucky being frozen because they want to get the Hydra stuff out of his head because he just doesn't trust himself. That either people are going to use this and going to acknowledge the fact that, yes, we can mind control the Winter Soldier and make him do really whatever we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we get a nice scene as, what happens if they find out he's here and they come for you, and Black Panther just says in that beautiful accent, let them try.
Oh, it's
and then it's the pan to the big Black Panther sculpture.
Yeah,
so good.
I can't remember the name of that statue that he has there. I can't remember, but that was just great. Wakanda looks so cool. I can't wait to see that on the big
is
screen.
going to look gorgeous.
Yes,
just this kind of integration and melding of like this beautiful African lush nation with technology.
There's advancement going on because we've already seen like the Guardians universe, we've seen Asgard, and now we're going to dive into Wakanda. I can't wait. Yeah.
Every Marvel fan stays right to the end.
Oh yeah. Got to.
And we get a very, very nice scene with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I loved it, because I remember going back to the days where I collected my 90s Marvel cards, and I had this one kind of puzzle card set. It's 9 cards. Spider-Man's in the middle on the wall, and his belt has the spider signal. So to see them use that, but on his web shooter instead, I was like, that's so cool. I love that whole thing, and I think we all kind of saw that kind of coming. Just to kind of promote, like, hey, this kid's coming up, and it does say Spider-Man Will Return and Spider-Man Homecoming.
Do you think they missed an opportunity to promote something like Doctor Strange or Infinity Wars or something like that?
Maybe a little bit, but
it would have felt a bit disjointed. Like
it would have
the 2 post-credit scenes. Yes, they set up more to the Black Panther movie and the Spider-Man movie. Yeah. But again, it goes with this whole theme of this whole movie is that it's all organic, right? Yeah. If you had to throw a Doctor Strange scene in there, which has happened with the post-credit scenes, it's something that's a bit more disjointed. But you're looking at it and you're like, that makes sense. All of this makes sense.
Exactly.
So we've talked about this movie for an hour and a half. I had a really hard time because I was trying to be very objective here. I don't want to come across like a Marvel fanboy or anything like that.
Right.
But there's not much I can really pick. I tried to look at it from a reviewer's perspective. I tried to put on the goggles and say, let's take away your love for the cinematic universe. Let's take away your love for Captain America in particular. And look at this movie more objectively. I still could not find anything really. There's a couple little nitpick things, but there's nothing substantially here that I could really pick apart.
No.
Or that I would even change.
No.
This is a near perfect comic book movie. And you could even remove that last comic book. This is a near perfect movie.
Exactly. My thoughts exactly. And I've tried going over the little things. I know some people have criticism or problems with the main villain. Me, I thought it worked very well. I think, hate to bring it up, BVS could have taken some notes on handling their Lex Luthor and kind of taking something from this instead of giving us this childish, outlandish character. Anyways, I won't go in there. But yeah, I thought this movie just did a very satisfying job.
It did.
Yeah.
Satisfaction is something we've come back to a lot.
Yes.
I never felt bored.
No.
I never felt exhausted. And I never felt like I was being shown a commercial for the next 4 cinematic movies.
Yeah.
Like we said before, everything was brought up organically. Every character got their moment.
Yes.
And it progressed every single character in the movie. It acknowledged why Hawkeye had come back. It gave you a little bit more on Ant-Man. It gave you the Spider-Man, the Black... Just had everything in there, but nothing was shoehorned. Because even in Age of Ultron, a lot of the Thor stuff was like, okay, I know what you're doing here. You're setting this up. I didn't feel that here.
No.
When the movie ended, I was like, everything about this, there's nothing I would change.
No.
And it's very rare to come out of a movie like that. Especially this day and age. Like, it's hard. Because when you're getting these movies being pumped out, like almost like factory work, again, they've completely changed the narrative and the status quo for the universe all in one movie.
Yeah.
And they've gone away from this. Yes, Marvel has this somewhat formula where they have comedy and action and all that. But this is the first movie to do a superhero movie without a main villain, really.
Right.
And again, was Tony meant to be the villain? I don't think so.
No.
I think both of them were meant to be right.
Well, that's the cool thing, because going into this, you could very much be on Cap's side, and I could be on Iron Man's side, and I'm looking at Cap like the villain, you're looking at Iron Man like the villain, but you still understand both sides.
Exactly. I would never call either of them a villain.
No.
It's just perspective.
Yeah.
Which
is great, which is so much, I don't want to say better, because I still love the comic book, but it's so much different than the comic. Because in the comic, I think a lot of people were looking at Tony like a villain.
Yeah.
Some people were thinking, well, Iron Man's kind of acting like a bad guy in this, whereas you can't really say that in this movie.
No.
Yeah.
And it took the right parts from the comic book event into the cinematic universe. And you couldn't adapt all of that. I know I was pushing very hard that there's going to be the death of Captain America because I thought that would have really propelled the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a different way.
Yeah.
But if they're going to go with this aspect of the Secret Avengers and we're going to see these guys popping up in other movies, I'm all for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Where would you rank this among your favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies?
Oh, number one.
Number one?
Yeah, it goes number one because I'm telling you, when I saw Avengers, the first one, that was number one. That was just incredible. You know, I liked Iron Man, but then Avengers took the spot. And then when Winter Soldier dropped, that was by far my favorite superhero movie. And then this movie just came out and just put everything out there. Just blew everything out the water. Yeah. How about you?
I'm still struggling here. I think I have to see it one more time.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that detracted away from the movie for me was myself trying to anticipate what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so going back and seeing it a second time, knowing kind of how it evolves, I think I'll enjoy it a lot more. Because, again, unlike Age of Ultron, this isn't a movie I feel like you need to go back and see twice to understand it. This movie I got from start to finish exactly what was happening. That's one of the highlights of it. And as far as where it sits in... I rattle now between these four. Civil War, Winter Soldier, Guardians, and Avengers.
Cool.
I have to see this again, let it marinate a bit.
For sure.
But it's definitely amongst those top four for me.
It's fantastic. And I can't wait to have the whole box set to watch first Avenger, Winter Soldier, and I'd probably even throw on Age of Ultron and then jump into this movie. You know.
Do you think this is a fitting end for the Cap trilogy?
Yeah. It's good closure, and it also leads more to anticipate.
Yeah.
What's
your ranking for this movie out of 10?
Out of 10 shields?
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't give this often because I think it's too easy to. But right now, where I sit, I'm going to hold on to reserve 10. I think this movie is just incredible. I am going to go and try and see it maybe tonight or maybe Monday. But as of right now, I have to give it a 10.
I'm right there. You know, I hesitate. I don't even think I would give my favorite movie a 10.
Right.
Because I can't give... I just don't feel like I can give something a perfect score.
Yeah.
But that being said, when I give something a 9, it's really a 10.
Yeah.
Because I'm never going to give anything a 10.
That's right.
I'm giving this a
that.
9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Only because I just have this hesitation to give anything a 10.
Yeah.
So to me, this is a near perfect movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And I absolutely loved it. High recommend from here.
Absolutely.
And it went above and beyond my expectations, which is a very rare thing because we're so invested in these movies and we know so much about them and we talk so much about this stuff. And so you're so invested in it that you get to a point where you get so hyped up. And this is a worry that my wife always has when we go into these movies is that I get so jacked up about these movies.
Yeah.
It was the same with The Force Awakens and same thing with this movie is that I'm just clamoring and I really, really want it to be so good. And she's always so worried that it's not going to deliver.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be upset when I come out.
Yeah.
This delivered on every single level.
It sure did.
And I absolutely have nothing but praise for this movie. Go and check it out if you have not seen it yet.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a must.
And so we'd like to thank again Izzy for coming on the show. I'm going to splice in here his final verdict on the movie. And as you could probably tell from what we discussed before, he's weighing a little bit more towards our side as well.
Yeah.
And we look forward to eventually getting Sanjay's verdict on the movie.
Yeah.
So he's kind of waiting until he finishes up his commitments here. And it'll be interesting to see coming from more of what I'm going to call a DC fanboy and seeing his verdict on this movie and as it compares to B vs. And it's difficult. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Batman vs. Superman. I'm not going to, but it's difficult to not compare it to another versus movie.
Yeah, especially when they're so close to each other, right?
So this is going to be the part where I spice in Izzy's thing. So take it away, Izzy. All right, Izzy, I know your time has to be cut short, but for the benefit of our listeners, why don't you lay down what your overall thoughts on Captain America Civil War are, if you want to comment a bit about the last scene, and maybe give it a little bit of rating. Do you recommend this to other people?
Oh, do I ever? Okay, so Civil War, it was like going in, the main thing for us comic book readers is how faithful is this to the comic, right? In Civil War, the movie is quite different from the comic, but in a lot of good ways. I think it meshed really well with the mythos that they have created with all these other movies, and it changes things that are fundamentally like different from the comic, but it does so in a very like it's very well done. So you can't really complain. Like that's a very, very common complaint that you get from comic book movies. Oh, they changed this or they changed that, they changed the name, they changed whatever, and that's usually all you hear about. Like people get really upset. People who read these comics, these fans, they feel this sense of propriety over the art, right? Yep. Over the medium. And in Civil War, I think we'll be hard-pressed to find people who are complaining about changes that were made because everything makes sense. It's an adaptation. They're doing the Civil War storyline as it would work with this universe we have here, right? One of the major points of contention is the secret identity thing, which we don't have in the MCU, right? So people were like, kind of like, how are they going to work that? Like, what's going to be the real, like, the issue that causes the whole rift and everything? It was very well done, faithful to the comic where it needs to be, but also went in the right direction for what they have already set up, right? You have the levity, you have the jokes, the quips, which are great. Like, you have the theater laughing in a good way, right? Like in a superhero movie. If you were to talk about people laughing at a superhero movie, say 20 years ago, you're thinking like Batman and Robin. Like that's the bad, laughing
at not.
They're not laughing with the characters, they're laughing at the silliness that you're seeing. And in this movie, you have both the seriousness. You have like this is a serious story. Like there's like I said, the terrorism thing, and you have these two characters that are friends, but now they're not seeing eye to eye at a fundamental issue, and you have lives at stake and all this. This is all very serious stuff. But then you have the difference in tone, and I think this back and forth, which a lot of movies can't quite do it well, but Marvel has done it again in a very, very cohesive, very satisfying. This is a word that keeps coming back.
Exactly.
Very satisfying way. The final fight with between Iron Man and Captain, the moment when Iron Man realizes what that big scene at the very beginning that I mentioned that keeps playing into the movie, when that is finally revealed that Bucky killed his parents. And then he turns to Cap and he says, "Oh, did you know about this?" And you see that Cap is hesitating, so he knew. And you see in Stark's face that he's hurt by that. This is like
so
his
well
parents.
Acted.
It's so well done, and the fight, you feel the weight, you feel the stakes. You don't know who's going to come victorious at the end because they're evenly matched, which is difficult to make. If you have a fight where some guy's wearing like a metal suit that is like super powered with all these weapons, and one guy who's just really a really good fighter, you'd think that Iron Man would win it 10 times out of 10. And it's not that way. It's well done. It's well balanced. You feel the stakes. You feel the weight of the punches, the emotional weight of what they're going through. Like they're getting bruised and like in something I didn't expect. By the way, there's a lot of a lot of cursing and like I thought
quite
that
violent
because it's a PG-13, right? It's PG-13, but
PG-13.
they I guess they've been more lax with like with expletives because they say shit quite a bit in this movie. I was surprised actually. I wasn't expecting. I thought you could only get away with like one. I guess it's with fuck. Yeah. But anyway, great movie. Of course, I recommend this. I would give this a good 9.5 out of 10.
Nice.
There's very minor things. It was satisfying in every way. It was a great movie-going experience. It was a great film to watch on the big screen. It's great to see these characters together. Great to see Spider-Man where he belongs with these characters. It was everything. Overall, great flick. I will see it again. I will buy this when it comes out. It was very faithful to my favorite story arc, which is Civil War. And again, a fan, we are the hardest ones to please. Like the casual viewer that just wants to see things exploding on the screen and people fighting, they're, I think, a little bit more lax with a lot of things. We have some expectations and we have certain things that we want to see. So for a fan like myself to give a glowing praise of a movie, I think that's saying a lot. And I can tell that you're right up there as well.
Yeah,
by far, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, full stop Marvel movie.
All right, Izzy, before you get out of here, where can people find you?
Right, so you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Nobre. I'm also on YouTube. I have a show called The Izzy Nobre Show. So yeah, I'm always there. I'm very active on social media, always kind of like hanging
Any
out
time of the
there.
day.
Pretty much. I don't sleep all that much, Tim.
No, but it's been great having you, man. Really appreciate you coming out and giving us some insight towards Captain America Civil War. And we look forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Yeah, anytime. It's great to be here.
And we are back to the present. Well, I guess it's the future? Or maybe not. I don't know. Anyways, huge praise for Captain America Civil War coming out of the Nerd Room. If you guys ever want to get a hold of us, our Twitter handles are at the end of the episode, and you can always get us at #EnterTheNerdRoom. As always, it's a pleasure talking comics and movies. For the Nerd Room, I'm Tim.
I'm Troy.
And that was Izzy. Thank you for entering the Nerd Room. I can't believe I just did that.
That wasn't bad, though.
Yeah.
That wasn't bad.
All right, guys, we are out. Don't forget to subscribe and rate and review us on iTunes. You can find our hosts, Tim, Sunday, and Troy, on Twitter at TheNerdRM, 1912 Podcasting, and Troy, The Boy, 87.